Hello, gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of Marketing Agency Exposed. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing excellent. How are you?
Good. I have a question for you guys.
Yes.
So I was walking down the street the other day in my neighborhood, and Brad, we live in the same neighborhood, so you'll know what I'm talking about, or at least visualize this. Do you do this with people or with yourself? Being in marketing and advertising and branding for years and years and years, I'm always probably a little too critical and judgmental of brands and images and logos and things just everywhere, whether it be on clothing, whether it be on a store. And if I see a new store about to open and I look at their branding, I look at their messaging, and not every time, but I can usually get a good idea of, okay, these people aren't going to be around long.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really bad name for a store, and the logo is outdated, and I'm like, this, and here's where I go with it. I want to ask if you guys do the same thing. I make a judgment on their product because I'm like, well, if that's how they're presenting themselves, the way that their product must not be that great, and
or if they're not relevant on what the best execution is.
You guys think like that?
I look at that, but I also look at trying to figure out their offerings.
Yeah.
Like when you see like in a small little strip mall, like a little fish poke restaurant, like little small one, you just know they're not going to stay around. Like it's not a brand you've heard of before. I'm like, okay, that'll last about
location is one of the
1
things.
year.
Yeah.
Because it's just not right in the right place, or not the right. Maybe a good offering. It's just not in the right demographic and place, or it's too narrow of an offering. I just look at that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But if their logo can be horrible. We've all seen great brands
Absolutely.
whose
There's
logos
exceptions.
are horrible. I mean, you look at like Google's initial logo. I mean, it was the most horrible thing you ever seen.
So there are some of those situations. Yeah, I was talking about one yesterday. I've got an example of one of those but also I say, would you not say most of the time that if the execution is relatively poor or not a relevant execution of something, that maybe the rest of their business has some of those kind of same attributes going on.
Yeah,
right?
100%. I believe 100% what you're saying.
Do you do that, Ken?
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah.
I did that with this brand called Dave's Bread.
Yeah.
You ever see that in Costco?
Yeah.
Right? Because it was
Proved
like
us wrong.
Proved us wrong. It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. That's like the counter to that,
Yeah.
But, and you see this, because like I saw, it was like this at first, and I should have known this,
We
right?
don't
But
care
at
about our
first,
logo, but we make good bread.
yeah. At first I was like, what in the world? Like, it's like a cartoony guy with like shredding a guitar. It's a bread brand. And then at first, I was like, that looks like, he probably drew that himself. I don't know Dave. And and I think Dave is awesome now that I've learned about him. But that's what I thought first, right? And but then you realize here's what they did really well. I'm talking about it right now, and I don't remember any other bread that was in that aisle.
What bread company has a guy shredding a guitar? None.
Yeah. So that's why I say I should have known, because maybe it was just a genius strategic move. And I think it may be, clearly. I think there's something to be learned from that.
Yeah.
Right? Just being different.
Well, it just proved me wrong.
Yeah.
But I mean, to your point, a really, really, really great product can overcome bad branding.
And I think, to me, if you're talking about a retail scape, to me, the environment is the feeling that you get when you walk into a retail environment has to feel good, and it has to feel like there's intentional and value there. And so, and it has to feel like wants to invite you. Like it says, come on in, we got some cool stuff in here.
I think it's personalities too, right? Like aesthetics are really important to me. If I don't like to sit in a place that bugs me, like those fluorescent lights in a restaurant,
I know.
like that's the worst. Like, I don't even like to go to something like that.
Right.
But for some people, they don't even pay attention. I never noticed the
I
fluorescent
don't know. The
lights.
eggs are good.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Yeah.
But growing up in New York, maybe
Definitely.
that's a whole different thing, right?
The restaurant scene.
Just like you
Or
don't
the
get
holes
the
in the walls?
luxury. Yeah, you don't get the luxury of like maybe a place like we live in Nashville, that more open spaces, more creative. You can do things with your space versus
But-
you're lucky to even have a hole in the wall.
But
many
you know what?
times.
Like those places, the hole in the walls, like they don't, they're typically people that have been around forever
Yeah.
and have the hole in the wall, not the startup restaurant that's the hole in the wall, that's probably setting yourself up for failure, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't have the recognition. The hole in the wall places that have the recognition are like, they've been there since the hole in the wall was the best thing that was out there.
Like the
They've had
70s.
time to build the brand.
Yes.
Correct. Yeah, I see what you're
Yeah.
saying.
I don't know.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
Snap judgments. It's great.
So let's move from the retail space to what we talk about a lot is the digital space. And, from the e-commerce world. And Ken, don't let me forget, we're going to talk about your new venture before the end of the
unveiling
program. So you better
Stay tuned.
Yeah, you got to listen.
New news.
I went to, or I won't name the conference, but I went to a retail conference, e-commerce conference in the Northeast recently. And I enjoyed many aspects of it. But in talking to you guys before we started the show, I was reminded why I stopped going to those things many, many years ago. And people would always ask me, even when I owned my own agency, like, do you guys want to? I'm like, no, it's a waste of time and money. I don't get the return on the investment.
Especially time.
Return on the investment. But we went to this one specifically because of the caliber of executives that would be there in the e-commerce that we could get in front of. And mainly just pick the brain and make contacts and learn some things that we could apply to what we were doing. So, but I was reminded that we come from a smaller agency models, right? Like Medicake is a smaller agency. Anthem Republic is a smaller agent in terms of just like head count, as people would judge things like that. And we've all been very nimble and we've always been very forward thinking. Many times those environments, those type of conferences where people congregate are not conducive to that type of thinking, right?
And I would question if they're conducive to the larger thinking as well. I don't know. I've been to so many of those. I'm in the e-commerce space. I've been to e-tail and Shop Talk and Retail X, which used to be IRCE, right? And all these other ones, right? And then I've been to all these other industry conferences in other industries, even in the music industry. Mm-hmm. Right? I remember when they were like youth, what was like youth music,
GMA, and all those.
Yeah. It was, and so it's a model, and there's something interesting about it. Like I'll say this, in general, I actually enjoy going to them,
right?
Because you get to, but maybe not for the right reasons. Because like you get to see it's like little Disney World, right? Like you get all these like really interesting, setups from different places, and some of them they do some really great, like they do some cool events because, and then it gets boring probably for the people that do this all the time.
It's a good place to get their team fired up, especially the youngsters.
And when we had some new people, we actually would bring them there. Oh, that's what I'm getting. Like you bring them there, and then like they learn to talk to people and pitch and all that kind of stuff. And you get to have, so it's a great training environment because you get to have like hundreds of sales conversations in the course of 3 days. But as far as an ROI, I've never, and from a small agency, even for a big agency, I don't know, I'd be interested to know if there's anything different, but I've never seen the worthwhile ROI. Like it's so expensive to be there relative to other things.
As a vendor, for sure.
As a vendor, especially. And again, I don't want to throw shade on the conference scene, but like, the fact that, you can pay to speak and that alone is like, wait, what? Like, anyway, there's a whole bunch of aspects of it that are, I know not everyone pays to speak, but
but that's a big money maker.
But it's a big money maker. And, there's all these little, if you used to have to pay to get internet and power. I remember that one.
Yes. Well, if you're in Chicago in a union city.
I would always steal from the booth behind me. Just like I used to do with it. I'm just kidding.
They'd send in the union
just like growing up.
enforcers.
We never did that.
Yeah, you did.
No, I didn't steal power from my neighbors. Oh man, it's good. But there's just all these little kind of nickel and dimey things, and at the end of the day, is there an ROI? And I've never found an ROI with it. You meet some great potential partners, and for us, especially in the e-com scene, like because in the e-commerce scene, there's there's a small group of people and there's a small group of conferences. And so I would get to see the same people at all, like there are the other vendors, but like the other platforms. And I have some really great friendships of the founders of some really cool companies that I see every single time. And that's been fruitful. Like we've made business.
Or if you want to get in front of some executives at potential target companies that you wouldn't be able to get an audience with.
But you probably have to do that in advance, right? There's a strategy. Like you probably have to say, hey, we're going to be over here.
There's network tools that they give you and things like that. But
ideally, like we would reach out to people.
This conference was here. I will say the positive side was they were really, really good about networking events. Like every day they'd have 2 or 3, like, okay, if you're in this space, we're going to have like wine at 5 and it's sponsored by this company. And, you could literally sit at the table with, people from different companies. But for me, again, I think this is more of a flaw than an advantage. Isn't that how Kryptonite works or our superpowers, right? Is, again, I'm walking down the aisle and looking at all the vendors and I'm judging I have no idea what you do based on what you just put on your big giant sign and booth you paid $10,000 for. Right. Or you sound like everybody else in here, so what differentiates you? It's just that. It's that kind of like everything merges into the same.
And it's got to be that for the person.
Same zeitgeist, the same words, the same verbiage that's cool for this year.
You kind of feel like, you go to the mall and those kiosks in the middle of the thing. People are like, hey, come over here. You need some makeup.
Exactly.
I'm like, dude, I don't wear makeup. And he's like, but
he's like,
your
not
wife.
Yet.
Yeah. Or come over and get this new iPhone case. It's awesome. It glows in the dark. But it's kind of similar where they're trying just to get your attention and they'll do anything to get your attention, whether it's, the hot girls or the crazy person in the clown house, some costume or something.
Or like an espresso machine.
Yeah, or something. Hey, come over here and get some free chocolate and come over here and here's a brochure.
Yeah. This year it was, the big talk was like first party data, bottom of the funnel, and then the acronym of the week was CDP, customer data platform.
I always feel like so icky and dirty, and my kids would say cringy after those
customer
kind of things.
Data platform.
I can't do that stuff.
Wait, it went from CRM to customer data platform.
It's.
I missed that boat.
You know why?
I missed that boat
because I won't name them, because in the e-commerce space, one of the main email players coined that and became that.
Yeah, I hear
and it's like, and you start going like, isn't that just CRM?
Yeah.
And then what is CRM?
Kleenex. It's like Kleenex. It becomes
it's the Coke. It's the soda.
Yeah. So what do you think about going to places where there's top tier speakers, where people like you're there to see like renowned speakers or something, some expert in the field?
If it's legit and they're invited and they're paid and there's a curation, like intentional curation for a purpose. I mean, obviously my mind goes to TED, right? Like would I sit for 2 days of TED speakers? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because they're curated properly and they're vetted and there's a system and there's a format, right? And I know what I'm getting when I go in and I know what the theme is. But many times at these conferences, it's just like hit or miss. You'll have a guy up there pitching his software. But the most frustrating thing, again, not to throw shade on conferences, but they have these things called fireside chats. That's the latest word for interviews, right?
Sure.
There's no fire.
And they're so inauthentic. They're half the time they're reading an iPad or a note card. And it's like on both sides. Like the questions, the questioner, the moderator is really just not good. You can tell they don't have experience. And then the person who's an executive or whoever being interviewed has their notes and they're like, that's a great question. I'm glad you asked that.
Right.
Here at our company, we do. And
it's horrible.
And, it's horrible. I'm sitting there going, what am I doing? So,
on that point, in my opinion, you can get a lot more value out of and get a lot more authentic teaching if you spend that money on a coaching program or a mastermind.
Absolutely.
And like in the e-commerce space, to attend or to have a booth at one of those conferences, you're paying several $1,000s for not much more. You can join a coaching program in that space, like the one we have, or if you're in a specialty space elsewhere, that would actually give you a lot more value than like, and I'm part of these things. So you see these things all over the place. Like, like it's funny, you go there for these kind of like curated talks and like kind of rough, probably in general, not necessarily the most cutting edge speaking. And instead you can go into these environments where you actually have someone who's done really something awesome and they're teaching you how they did that. And then there's conversations with all the other people in the room who are at the same level as you. Mm-hmm. And it's just as much.
Or you could start a podcast with two of your friends and you could just meet every Friday and
we can
talk
give it away
about
for
things.
free.
Give it away for free. And you just learn and absorb things from each other.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I think the point is, and I'd love to hear your guys.
Money better spent other places.
Yeah. I'd love to hear your guys' perspective on what it tells me is that there is a time to integrate and disrupt the live event / conference space. And if you were to just like dream a second, like what would that even look like in our field?
Yeah. I find that a lot of these events is interesting because it's just a hub, a place that your prior relationships of other business people can meet in one location, especially if they're not in the same city as yours. So it's like, hey, while I'm there, I'm going to meet up with so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. So it's really just a place to meet up a lot of times. And a lot of the value comes from these prior relationships that you're just building upon. And because you're in the same space, it kind of makes sense for the meet up there. And I find that a lot of companies, that's what they're there for. They're not there to meet specifically new people. That's kind of a bonus. Or to get awareness, and that's kind of a bonus, but it's really, they've already done the work of that. And a lot of times they will also, we have clients, we personally don't participate in those just because it's not really, again, the value of it, I think we would spend elsewhere. But we have clients that do, a lot of events, healthcare, health tech, technology, and it's hard. We don't see a lot of return on investment, but what we do see is a couple of these core relationships being built. So a lot of times the ROI doesn't come from the event, but it comes from, again, meeting people that they've already kind of known and kind of fostering those relationships there. And they're able to hang out in their social events, so they're able just to hang out and chat. But sometimes they get other assets. So if you participate and you get a booth and you spend $10,000, you also get a database afterwards of all
that's
the attendees.
The value, I think, for many of us.
And a lot of times the database is great, but now you've got to work it.
Right.
Yeah, but then
and
also
you've got to have a plan for that.
We all know that, like, if you're walking that conference and you dare to give your real email address, you are leaving and you are getting bombarded by 50,000 people.
Correct.
Right? So I don't even know the value of the database. But here's where I've seen
I don't want to go to an event just to be there, and all of a sudden I get emails from 100 different companies that were there, and now I'm on their spam list,
But what I think has been where I think it works, I've seen it work well, is in the true trade show experience in a B2C environment. There are several industry trade shows that work really, really well. So I know, like, a lot of the brands that we have and we work with, they're at trade shows for, outdoor companies. And so the buyers for Dick's Sporting Goods and Bass Pro and all these places go to these trade shows, and they get to walk the event, and they actually make purchases, and they find new product to put in their store.
Yeah.
It's like, those are valuable. Those are trade shows.
Yeah.
But that is in a completely, I don't know, the B2B space, I think, is struggling on the conference and trade show level to find value there. I've never talked to one person. I've talked to a lot of them that actually feel like they get the value.
And the thing is, they're all kind of selling the same thing, but just putting a different mask on it, or a different name on it, or a different terminology that's supposed to be unique. It's not unique.
Yeah,
for the most part.
That's what we learned.
There's really not anything that's spectacular typically there.
So if you're listening to this and you have a different opinion, you've actually found value of a trade show, I would love to know. Please send us an email.
Yeah. Yes. You guys both know our friend Don Donahue. He works a little bit in this space, rethinking and disrupting the live event space, because it's been his career in other industries, live performance, live event, live production. And he's done something really interesting that I've actually participated in as a speaker, but he had a client where he tried something out called the pre-note. And what a pre-note is, and it works usually in smaller type conferences and events, but it can work in bigger ones if you figured out how to scale it up. But basically what you do is you take your speakers, and let's say you have a topic or a category and you have 5 speakers. What those speakers do is they create their talk in a video format in their presentation in advance. You get it, and let's say I want you to shoot, this 15-minute talk with your presentation, however you want to do it, and then you distribute in advance to the attendees. Here are the pre-notes that you've signed up for and you're going to participate in, and so that and you create some sort of mechanism to verify like who's viewed it, who hasn't, et cetera. And so when you get there to these events, when you sit down and watch that speaker, the speaker's not up there repeating it or giving it. What he does, he becomes or she becomes a facilitator for an interactive discussion to go, okay, you've watched my presentation. Let me go over the bullet points and remind you, maybe add some color to it. And then I want you to, around your tables, or I want you to make, some groups. I want you to spend the next 5 minutes. Here's your prompt based on my talk.
It's actually a workshop.
It's a workshop. And then you stop, and then you're just like, okay, group 1, what was your outcome? Right. Do you have questions? Do you have a representative? And so I love that, because all of a sudden you're not just like, I got to go sit here and then wait to go have cocktails with everybody tonight. You're actually engaging, learning something, and participating in it. So I thought that was a cool idea.
Yeah.
Conferences.
One of the things that I've seen that actually is better than conferences, especially if you're looking for growth and investment, is to actually get part of like startup pitches, where, and there's a bunch of them. You can find them specifically in specific industries where you have industry players. A lot of times you even have big brands that are looking to buy out companies. That's a really cool thing that you can do. You can sign up and you can pitch your company, and it's really, there's an ask at the end though. So it's not for signing up clients per se, but it is something that could help your growth, especially if you have a new product, new technology that you're looking to get funding, typically like a series funding, or even startup, a seed funding.
Yeah.
And I've seen some of them that really are pretty dynamic, and there's a lot of like the real good ones. They have some pretty good people that show up because they're serious about investing and looking for new tech.
Yeah, just observing and watching those pitches. It's funny you said that, because at this conference that we just blasted, there was a really good session that I watched. And you know what it was? It was 3 young guys that obviously had paid to do this, but it was really good. They stood up, and for 15 minutes, they pitched their company to their target audience that was sitting there. And it was awesome. They had it nailed down. It was succinct. They explained it. They had the graphics, and it was polished. They weren't the best speakers in the world, but you overlook that for what you're talking about. It's like, oh, I learned something. They said something innovative and different. They explained how they did it. They showed examples. And at the end of it, it was brilliant. They're like, we want to give this to every single one of you. It's no charge. You use it until you see a return, and then we'll talk about,
there you go. Yeah.
And I'm like, brilliant.
The reason that worked is because no one else does that.
Exactly. Yeah. But it was a pitch. Yeah. Like you said, it was a pitch.
Free still works too. Free.
Yeah,
it does.
Absolutely. If it's free, it's for me. Absolutely. It's amazing. So getting off of that and moving toward other things you guys have been working on, Ken, tell us about your new media outlet that you're working on.
So I've been working on this for a little while, but we're launching it. It's a new show.
Okay.
It's called Grow Time.
All right.
So you can find it. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and all those places. So it'll be the Grow Time show.
Okay.
And it is essentially breaking down the principles of growth and success that are woven into the universe. So it's personal
awesome.
development, it's business. I even actually do a Grow Time business devo. So business devotional, for anyone that's kind of, that way. And from the perspective of a business owner. And it's been something that it's been in my soul for some time, and just didn't put aside the time to launch it, and decided to really get it off the ground. And so, yeah, you can go find that.
Are you going to have like guests, or is it just you talking, or is it,
We do both. So a lot of it is me breaking down something that is a principle that I discovered that helped me in an area of success in my life. So that might be in a lot of business stuff. It could be in leadership, or physical development, like personal development, whether it's mindset or fitness. But it also might be spiritual. And then, yeah, I think I don't know what the format, but like I would love to have guests. You should be on.
Yeah,
you should be on.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
maybe we'll do one of these. It'll be a Grow Time episode.
Yeah,
sure.
And we'll focus on.
Did you release any
something
yet?
else? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. By the time this episode goes live that we're talking about right now, it should be fully released, and you should be able to find it, no problem.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Grow Time.
Again, the name Grow Time.
Grow Time.
Is it GROW?
GROWTIME.
Cool.
Yeah. So you can go to thegrowtimeshow.com. You can go to growtime.show.
Oh, awesome.
And you can find it on YouTube and Apple and everywhere. And,
Can you give us a little sample of like what's been on your
What's
mind?
one of the topics?
Yeah,
Like, what's the first program
Sure, it's a great one.
about?
I don't know if this is the first episode, but one of the episodes that I recently did was about being a time multiplier. And this is a really interesting concept. I actually learned it. The core of this concept I learned from a friend who's in business. But it's this idea. People talk about an ROI on the money that you spend, right? And people then also, there's this thing called return on time invested, right? That ROTI, right? A time multiplier is someone who gets return on their time. And what I mean by that is you align every day to work on tasks that are tasks that, when completed, they not only save you the time of doing that again in the future, but they compound. So like the most simple example would be like investing into automating something in your business, right? And let's say you invest 2 hours of your time to do that, or 10 hours, whatever. But you have to do it regularly. It's something that happens all the time. Like that's the simplest example, right? Like, so let's say the first time it takes 2 hours, and next time it comes around, you don't have to do it. So you got 2 hours back. Now you're net zero. Next time it's 2 hours again. Now you're gaining 2 hours into your life. You're literally gaining hours on your life, and that thing will exponentially increase the hours in your life into the future. So that idea of being a time multiplier.
It reminds me of compounding interest.
It's
if you
compounding
look at a
interest.
compounding interest chart,
Compounded
it starts
time.
slowing, but then it starts getting more vertical.
And here is the demonic aspect of how our minds have been conditioned. Most people would say time isn't, or most people would think just inherently, well, money is scarce and time is infinite, right?
I don't think that
But
way.
like, no, I know you don't.
I struggle with that.
But like, you think about that, like we've been conditioned that way in our entire lives. We've also, not only have we been conditioned that way, there's something, I think you brought it up last time, called effort bias.
Yes.
Right? So this idea of effort bias is like, we only value things that take a lot of time. How horrible is that?
Yeah.
Okay, so, we're taught that in school. It takes a lot of time to do this thing, and then it must be really good. It's
There's
not
a struggle.
Or if you work really, really hard, you will get whatever.
Or when I pay, or if I hire if I pay for something, I want to know that it took a lot of effort to do that.
Right.
Once you get into like high performance environments, and you guys are in these environments, I am. And once I was in those, I was aware like the highest performance environments are like the complete opposite. It's a different universe. And you realize that the very successful, very wealthy, not even just wealth, but like just healthy, high performance individuals have a completely different mindset. It's result for least amount of time. And if they pay for someone to do something, it doesn't matter to them that there's no effort bias. But this idea that money is scarce and time is infinite is woven into how we work. And so the truth is the exact opposite. Mm-hmm. The truth is time is scarce, money is infinite. So let's use money to buy time and money, not money to buy, not time to buy money. Okay, so the idea of a time multiplier is this person who like looks at time differently than everybody else, values time in a way that, and actually aligns their life to create things that literally exponentially increase the value, like the time that they have. Working out would be one of those. I invest 3 hours a week. I literally add years to my life, like complete, and so, and then the last thing I'll say is like, so like I would say like, if you're poor or in a poor state, you use time to buy money, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so everyone's heard that it's before.
Like minimum wage,
right? Well, you just use your time per hour, right? You sell your time for money, and that everyone's heard that, right? So then there's this idea of like, the successful, rich sort of people, they use their money to buy time. And then the wealthiest, most successful, and I don't just say it's not just money, it's money and just happiness and joy. Those people realize that time is finite and money is infinite. So I'm going to use money to buy time back in an exponential way, and I'm going to invest my time to get time back in an exponential way and compound money as well.
That's interesting.
So it's just little. So anyway, that kind of thing.
That's good.
Those are things that are, and so I found in my life that, just like you guys, that I actually started writing these down, but like I call them success principles. And principles is the key word. Like a principle is something that's like a law of the universe, like gravity. And a principle, if it's truly a principle, works for everybody the same way, no matter who you are, as long as you apply it, right, in the right environment. So as long as you follow the rules, you get the same results. And I believe I've in the last year, I've really, my eyes have been open to, there's no mystical thing around how we live a successful life, a happy life, a life that has purpose, a life that in terms of like gaining wealth and building a business. There's no mystical way of doing that. It's just we are not aware of the principles of success. And so I've just over time started to write down when I discover a principle of success. And this podcast is in some ways breaking down a lot of those that I've learned.
That's awesome.
And then, we also do like business devotionals, which are cool. Where we actually literally I go into a part of the Bible and like from a business owner's perspective, look at how I can apply for a high performance, ambitious person, what that means for me. Yeah. And so interesting because there's so much like practical advice on those success.
It just shows how universal these principles are, and
right.
like people discovered them in many different ways and different formats.
Are you what's the like maybe the percentage of guests that you have on your show versus you freestyling or
so it's like all the episodes so far are all me. But I plan to bring on guests specifically as experts in these places. So, so as I have, like, my plan is like, as I have these topics, and I might even come back to them, like the topic of time, and find someone who's really doing that really, really well, then like pick their brain on it. Yeah. And I would love to, I'd love to have you guys.
Are these also on video?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's a YouTube show.
Got it.
Apple, Spotify, all that kind of stuff. And it's been a lot of fun. It's so for anyone that knows, like I'm in the e-commerce world, but really I'm in the business world. Like I love business. The reason I talk e-commerce is because that's our specialty, and it's really a fun business channel. Yeah. But for me, my life is much broader than that, and and it's been fun to do a show where I didn't have to specifically talk about e-commerce business. And I almost look at it as like the things that I try and teach my kids, I'm trying to teach on the show.
That's great.
And
what's beautiful about that is it'll be documented for
my
a
kids.
long time for their kids and
Now,
grandkids.
is the logo for the show good? Because
that's because I'm going to judge it.
Look at it, and Bob's going to judge it, and I'm going to
know
figure
what?
out if it has
I'll tell it how
value.
long this show will last.
Okay, you can judge it. Yeah.
No, just
I'm trying to find it for you here.
Oh, you're going to show us? Okay.
I expect some good swag if I like it.
yeah.
Well, so we're gonna do a version 2 of logo if you don't like it.
No, it's okay. You got to grow, right? That's what it's in the name. It's in the name.
Yeah, it's actually a logo that we did. To be honest with you, I'll only say this here. Like we did a few years ago.
Oh, okay.
And because the show was planned to launch in 2019.
Okay.
Shame on me.
Well, COVID
but it's
happened.
changed.
Yeah.
The concept has changed.
You know,
And
time is not infinite.
That's right.
So you're going to have to.
Time is relative. Come on.
I was talking with my business coach yesterday. I was literally like, I've probably lost years and millions of dollars because of this situation, this issue that I was trying to figure out in my life. But that's not why I didn't launch. It didn't launch because it didn't feel right. And then it was going to be an e-commerce only podcast, which, by the way, we have an e-commerce podcast as well. So if you're an e-commerce person, which these are all agency people, so this is an agency podcast.
What's that one called?
It's the Metageek e-commerce show.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Metageek e-commerce show.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that one launched already?
I've subscribed to
Yeah.
that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I subscribe.
yeah. Subscribe.
I do.
Good.
Yeah.
Now
I
the
need to
reason
like-
the
I need
reason
to-
I
I need to-
hesitated is I'm thinking about changing the name a little bit to the e-commerce success formula.
I like that.
I like that better.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's good for search.
Yeah. And so by the time this episode comes out, it may or may not have changed. But we have an e-commerce show, which is e-commerce stuff. Yeah.
Can I push my podcast too?
Please.
Yeah.
I'm
The
sorry.
human
I'm
voice.
sorry. You asked me.
The
You
human
asked,
voice
dude.
with Bob Hutchins. Well, I didn't know you were going
Yes.
to go off on 5 podcasts. I'm like, okay, now
I have one
now you
more
crossed
thing
the
even
line.
to say.
Go for it.
No, I'm just joking. I do, but I'm not going to say it. Tell me about the human voice with Bob Hutchins, because
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with agency stuff.
Not always.
Yeah.
Rarely. It's kind of like your grow time. It's just my personal interests, and sometimes I may have a world-renowned author. I might have somebody in the tech world that's done something really cool. I might have someone in the social justice world that's like talking about, I don't know, some work they're doing. But it's that intersection of technology, culture, psychology, spirituality. You know, I have a lot of people from different perspectives there, and it's just my own personal outlet that I get. And here's the thing: in contrast to what we've been talking about at the conference, my best investment of time and money is to start a podcast and interview all the people that I've always wanted to talk to that I could never talk to, that will always say yes to a podcast.
By the way, great strategy from a sales side of things. Like all the people that you try and flag to your booth, and they don't want, they make believe they
Start a
can't-
podcast.
Start a podcast, S&B on. They're like, absolutely,
Right.
I would love to.
So, Ken, is this going to be a weekly drop?
You know what? I don't know.
Like, what's the?
He's not giving your. I'm just
That's
kidding.
fine.
No, I was
It's
going to
not
ask you
about
the
me.
same thing,
I'm just
because
joking, I'm just
I
joking,
do
sorry.
follow. I've listened to your podcast. What's your frequency of yours typically?
It's infrequent.
Okay.
I was curious. How frequent do you? Is it?
I've
infrequent?
done like over 100 and something episodes that were like 2 a month probably, or for a while I was doing once a week. But then I took the summer off, and now I'm starting back up again. So I try to get at least 2 a month just to keep it fresh and to keep the things flowing. I just don't have the time to do much more than that.
At the moment,
Well, if you listen to Ken's new podcast,
I know I need to multiply my time.
You'll time hack.
no, just so you know, that's not my. I didn't make that concept up.
Yeah, and that's just one episode,
You
right?
know, but it's a concept that changed my perspective.
Yeah.
I kind of got it a little bit from you.
Really?
'Cause you talk about time all the time, and it's just that time emphasis. And
Well,
I think that
I struggle with both
Yeah.
time and money. To be honest with you, I feel like there's neither. I'm losing both of them right between my fingers.
it's kind of like your time is like a bank account. Like you have it's your seed money for your life. You can invest it in different ways. A lot of people invest it in like playing World of Warcraft. Is that a thing anymore?
I
Or
guess, I don't
Minecraft,
know.
right?
Yeah.
Or in front of Netflix. It's not necessarily bad, but at least being intentional about it. Like being like, okay, I'm gonna do at least one a week. I might do 2 a week. I might try and do 2 a week.
Yeah, that's great.
It depends on how much. Right now, there's I have a fairly long backlog. So I think
You might inspire me to get more regular then.
wow.
cool. That's good. Healthy competition.
Here's my thing though. I like to interview people. I don't like to speak on my own. I probably should, but it like scheduling guests, getting
hard, I know.
arranging schedules.
Oh, a
It's
lot of work.
hard to do every week.
That's
on
why I don't do guests so often.
that. Yeah.
Because until I can do that full time,
You need a producer.
Yeah.
To
well, you'd also need to basically. I mean, most
And you
people
gotta
that do
vet
guests.
people.
Well, most people, everyone that does guests and does it regularly, like John Lee Dumas, if you know, like that, the Entrepreneurs on Fire, he does one a day, I think.
Wow.
But it's essentially you have to be full time.
Yeah.
doing the show.
Yeah.
Which you can be if that's your purpose or that it actually produces the level of income you need. But at the moment, I'm not. And so scheduling guests is the hardest part. But that's kind of why I don't do guests so often, and when I would like to do more.
Yeah.
I get that.
But I think I need to be pushed in that way. So I'm glad that you have asked me
excited.
there.
Again, let us know as soon as it's there.
Grow time with Ken
Out
Hunt.
there.
Thank you.
I'll smash up the likes.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like you guys are pushing me, and I'll come on the show and say this, that there will be a book in some sort of editorial phase before the end of the year.
Oh wow.
Great thing is you're writing it as you do the podcast.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's cool. Your chapters are probably the podcast at some level, right?
Well, I do. I kind of like wrote the concept, and then I'm like, part of that is exactly right. Like a lot of these concepts are just in there.
Cool.
And I've got an e-commerce one and a business development one.
Nice.
Very cool.
Idea, and that I've actually worked out. So one of those two will be in hopefully in.
Can you repeat the name again in the
for the e-commerce podcast or for the book?
No, the name of your new.
Oh, the Medicake e-commerce show, but it might be called the e-commerce growth formula.
Yeah, but then your new show.
Oh, Grow Time.
Yeah,
the Grow Time show.
Grow Time, the Grow Time show.
You can go to growtime.show or thegrowtimeshow.com or kennethott.com or kenott.com.
Yeah, I like that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Guys, it's been a fun discussion. Lots of little tidbits.
And Bob, again, your podcast.
The Human Voice with
The
Bob
Human Voice,
Hutchins.
yes,
with
very-
Bob Hutchins.
Yeah, you got some good episodes. I've listened to quite.
Awesome.
A
Thank you
few,
very
so,
much.
yeah,
And
really
what I
enjoy
think is
those.
smart is you intersect your book. Like it's like the concept of your book is a lot of what your podcast is about, which is really cool. So book is
Well, I have
Our Digital Soul.
Yep, Our Digital Soul.
Is it based on? Is this more the podcast more like that, or is it more like the?
Not. Yeah, I mean, I cover that. It's just. Hopefully, it's an embodiment of my own interest and growth and evolution as a human, and that means career. It means personal. It means all of those things. And so I try to process my life through my guests and through my own interests and through my own writings. And hopefully it'll be a benefit for other people, because I think, to your point, all of these things are universal and they're not bound by time. And so just like you're putting stuff out there that people will be able to apply, I think certainly that's what I'm trying to do. And so I think it's what we're doing here, right?
That is what we're trying to do.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
All right, gentlemen. Well,
Yes.
until next time, talk
Thank
to you
you
soon.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.